All right. Hello, my name is James Still, and I am the Playwright-in-Residence at the Indiana Repertory Theater. And today I am with T.J. Young, playwright of Number 6, which will soon be streaming at the IRT. And it's such a pleasure to be with you and to get to talk to you.
Thank you very much, James. It's excellent to meet you.
Yeah, it's like writer to writer, getting to talk a little bit about what we do, which is nice. I always say, it's funny about, the writers I know, when I see them at conferences, we kind of wave in the hall because we're going off to our own rehearsals and we never get a chance to really hang out and talk about what we do with each other. So it's nice to get to do that with you. And let me also just extend a warm welcome to your work, to the IRT, and to the history of the IRT, which now you and your play is a part of. And I'm just so glad that that I can say that.
Thank
you. Yeah, let's talk a little generally about how you got to the very idea of playwriting. One way of asking that is, do you think that you chose to be a writer, or did the writing choose for you to become a writer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's the latter, that the writing chose me. I was lucky enough to go to a creative arts elementary school where they constantly fostered, writing and acting and music and dance and all the other good stuff. And I started writing like short stories when I was a little kid. And I just always wrote as a way to, just get stuff off my chest and all the other good stuff. And I did theater through middle school and high school, but after high school, I actually quit. I quit theater altogether. I was like, I'm done. I'm going to go to school, get a psychology degree, and get like a real job that pays money and, all the other stuff. Yeah. And it was my first semester in college that I was like, I think I'm going to try to write a play.
Can you remember that moment? Like, what was that moment? Because I always think how incredible that we think we can write a play, right? But also just what was in you that you were like, I'm going to write a play?
Yeah, I went back to like why I had quit theater. Essentially, one was like, we're told there's no money in the theater, so get a real job. But the other part was that, for as well-intentioned as my high school was, I was constantly told in some way or other, like, you're really good, you'd be great for this part, but like, we need you for Cassius Biggs in the Kentucky Cycle, or we need you for this, right? And that was part of the reason why I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And so I told myself, it can't be that hard to write parts that like I could do. And so I just tried, like my first 3 plays are bad. And I'm not just saying that, like, looking back, I found them this summer and I was like, oh no, this is just like categorically bad. But yeah, it was really an experiment of like, is there a way for me to create roles that like I could see myself in? And in my early days, it was definitely about, can I create roles that anybody can step in? So like that was kind of my missive from the top. That's still a part of my writing, very much so.
Yeah.
Except for when I feel like, identity plays an important factor in a story. But if it doesn't, I'm just like, let it go. But yeah, it's it was from this place of frustration, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
I was like, if no one else is doing it, maybe I can do it.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's one of those things, right? Don't wait for somebody else to do that thing, step up. And I think that's the other thing, right? And I think we're seeing this in this year, this very strange year, the pandemic, how artists are leaders. And, I think your play Number 6 is also a kind of leadership, in that it is telling a story that we're about to talk about. It's modeling, in a way, right? A kind of conversation that I think a lot of people are hungry for, that's difficult, painful. Some people would say impossible. And I think that you make space for that so beautifully in your play. And I do want to mention that Number 6 was a winner of tell me if this is right, the 2017 Harold and Mimi Steinberg National Student Playwright Award. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's a great recognition. Obviously, the Steinbergs are, their foundation has been an incredible supporter of the arts, and a supporter of you, as it turns out. So what was that like for you? Was that a moment of validation? What's your relationship to those kinds of prizes and recognition?
to be honest with you, that was extremely surreal. So it was when I was in grad school at Texas State University, and I was at the regional Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival, and the director of the entire festival, his name is Greg Henry, and
I know Greg. Yeah.
yeah, Greg is great. He's
He
great.
is. Yeah.
And I remember it was like the second to last day of festival. And these festivals are draining, right? Even
Yeah.
if you're away from school, they're draining. And I just remember sitting in this theater at San Angelo University, and Greg Henry just stood up in front of everyone. And he's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm just here to say TJ won this thing." And he said, and I was like, and then he just like walked by and he like patted me on the shoulder and then walked away. And I was like, "What just happened?" And then they just
Wow.
started, and then they just started the performance that they were about to start. And I was like, I'm so unsure about.
Right. I have this feeling too, whenever I get news like that, I have to read the email like 10 times to
Yeah,
believe that it's actually true, right? There's
right.
something built in us was like, no, no, that can't be
And even
right.
then, I don't believe it till I get the certificate or something like that.
Right. No, that's so great. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so sort of moving into number six, I do want to talk about your writing process, sort of, I hate to say in general, because there's nothing general about a writing process, but maybe your writing process through the lens of number six, and maybe how it connects to the writing you're doing now, because from the date of 2017, the Steinberg Award, this play is not brand new.
Right.
So what conversation, the work you're having now, how are you in conversation with number six at this point in your life? And um, what does your process look like? Do you have rituals? Do you have the must-haves in order to write, time of day, all those kinds of things that I think people are always a little mystified about? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
So TJ Young, how do you do it?
Yeah, great. I'll start with how I did number six. Number six
Great.
was, it was a grad school project. It was like, you have to have a play for your second year, for your second of 3 years. And I was like, okay. And I remember writing it in a class where I was supposed to be the TA. Well, I was the TA. I wasn't supposed to be the TA. I was the TA. And I was supposed to be paying attention, but I wasn't. And it became one of those things where twice, 2 days out of the week, I had that hour and a half where I could just sit down and kind of work on this. But also I drove 45 minutes one way to school. So I had an hour and a half in the car total each day where I could just sit and think about this. So
Mhm.
I would write at school, and then like right before I went to bed, I would write more things that I thought about in the car. And the first draft came out in about 2.5, 3 weeks, just kind of like
Mm,
poured out of me. And
yeah.
this was my response to Michael Brown. This was my Ferguson play without being about Ferguson.
Yeah.
Um, and it became something that I realized I needed to have a conversation about within myself, about where I stood with because I have family members who work in the correctional facilities. I have friends who are police officers and stuff like that. And so I had to kind of reckon with myself, like, how do I feel about all these things?
Mm,
And because it was a grad school situation, we workshop pages in class, and I was able to tweak things. And so that process was very much guided. um, my process now is a little more destructive, and and what I mean by that is I will write a whole entire first act, and I have a dramaturg that I work with consistently, and I'll hand him the first act, and he'll read it, and he'll give me feedback, and I'll throw that entire first act away, and I'll start again.
when you
um,
say you throw it away, do you really throw it away? Do you never refer to it again?
I have it up to, because there's some
Okay.
parts that I want to like pull
Yeah.
maybe, but I
Okay.
start I start from
Yeah.
page one all over again,
Mhm.
because I ask myself, if I have someone sit there for an hour and a half, and they're not asking the right questions that I want them to ask at the end of that hour and a half, I've done
Mhm.
something wrong.
Mhm.
And so like, and I trust my dramaturg. He knows my voice. He knows what I'm trying to say. And if he can't even pick out what I'm trying to say, then I'm like, all right, then I'm probably not on the right path.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so,
That's interesting. You're saying too. I'm thinking, TJ, about this idea of questions, and that your play wants to be asked questions, right? That that's part of the story in a certain way. So and this is I'm maybe throwing you a curveball, but can you think of 2 questions that you hope your play is asking audiences, or that they may ask themselves? And
Yeah.
maybe it's just what what are your 2 questions, maybe, is the better answer.
Yeah. One question is absolutely like, what is the way forward for you personally? Because I think that it's been proven that this isn't a one size fits all situation, that like yes, there are systemic things that need to change around policing and violence to minorities. But what in your eyes would make the difference, right? And the other question is like, what conversations are you avoiding with people? And that's kind of been my mantra this whole entire year, is that like, I write about these tough questions, I write about these tough conversations, and so I was like, I need to start having them. And so I've started having them in like this really profound way with people who are, with, like I said, my friends who are cops. And I say, let's just talk about it. My friends who say things like, oh, I don't see race, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. Or my friends who are I'm a queer person, I'm a queer man too, so people who like, put queerness against like biblical, I'm like, okay, let's talk about these things. And I've kind of stopped avoiding. My friends have started calling me confrontational, but because
I would say engaged. How
yes,
about that?
I like that. Well, because the thing is, it's gotten to a point where it excites me, because I'm starting to see that everyone at the base has like something they're afraid of, right? And that usually informs a lot of their actions. Like, I'm doing this because I'm afraid X, Y, and Z is going to happen, or I feel this way because I'm afraid blah 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 blah. And like having these conversations, I get to a lot of people's fear, and it feels like there's like I might not agree with them, but I can at least understand them, and I can I'm not going to say I always forgive, but I can at least be like, I can see your point of view. It might be flawed to me, but I understand. And hopefully there's like a bridge connected, so that way we can kind of continue to have these conversations, because no one wants to get any of this wrong.
Right. Yeah. No, I think, and I think, again, tying it to your play number 6, I think that your play lives that, and I think that's one of the gifts of your play, is it allows us as an audience that experience, that empathetic experience, that unique experience of being in that room and witnessing, at least, difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And it's one of the beautiful things about the theater, right? Is it can be a place to gather and do that hard work,
Right.
or to begin that hard work, maybe is a better way of saying it. I also want to go back. I loved what you said about, you wrote that this is your Ferguson play, but it's not about Ferguson. And so for anyone listening to this who hasn't seen the play yet, the setting is Cincinnati, Ohio, April 11th, 2001. So do you want to give us a little bit of context about that event? And I'm assuming, although never safe to assume, but I'm assuming this is a fictional family that you put inside a historical event. So
Absolutely.
talk about any of that you would like, just knowing that some of us have not seen the production yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I did was, I knew I didn't want to write this is slightly like the producer brain in me. I knew I didn't want to write a Ferguson play, because I knew that those were coming. And I also knew that I didn't have enough distance from it to feel like I could write about it in a way for me to actually tackle all those things. So I started doing my research, and then when I found out about the Cincinnati race riots in 2001, which lasted 5 days in April, and I thought, how come nobody knew about this? How come it wasn't the big news headline of 2001? I'm like, what else happened in 2001? 9/11, right? And 2001 became the year of 9/11. So this story got kind of swept up and swept away. And an unarmed Black man was shot and killed by an off-duty police officer, and it's eerie to the stuff that happened in Minnesota this summer, where there was a people broke into the police station. They turned the flag upside down. They were throwing bricks and all these things that people were like, wow, this is the first time it's happened. And I'm like, it isn't.
Mm.
And so that was like the impetus of all this, to be like, people thought that the riots happened, the riots and the anger and the protests happening in Ferguson was the first time it's happened. I'm like, it isn't. Just like it wasn't the first time that happened in LA during Rodney King, right?
Right.
And I started asking people, I was like, do you know about this? And they said no. And so I said, okay, this is my play then. This is my
Right.
play.
Right.
And I created a fictional family that are trying to live in the city during times of curfew and looting and everything like that, who are trying to stay out of it to protect themselves, but also have a complicated relationship with law enforcement.
Mhm.
Um, and then the premise of the play, they bring a person into their home who happens to be a white man, and they find out all this information about him, and they're forced to reckon with the racial tensions happening in the city.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
me having
Yeah.
a conversation with myself about all of it.
Yeah, I so appreciate the tenderness and the forthrightness with which you just talked about the play. I know it's so difficult. Or I'm projecting. I find it difficult as a writer to to sort of say, what is my play about? And I found, actually, when I think about it in terms of what is my play trying to do, I'm able to answer that question more. So, and I think you've probably covered this in some ways, TJ. But is there anything you want to add to what is number 6 trying to do, rather than what is it about? What is it trying to do in its guts?
Yeah, it's trying to talk about the extinction of Black men. It's talking about the an amazing thing happened, and I realized that the something happened this summer that, and for those of you who haven't seen it, I don't want to give it away, but I realized that the character of Kelly didn't have to be white, and like
Hmm.
it was an epiphany to me, those of you who've seen the play, you'll understand. When you're going to see the play, you'll understand. But like, it was that point that I was like, no, this is like a systematic thing
Hmm.
around the extinction of African American men.
Hmm.
And this play is trying to bring light to that, and like all the ways that it shows up and all the fears that are around that. Like, in my heart and my soul,
Yeah.
that was the initial thing that I wanted to kind of like pull forth.
Yeah, and and thank you for all of that. And I'll just remind anyone listening that as a writer, we can't control ultimately what an audience might take away. It is an offering. And you used the word earlier as it's, about the experiment that it
Mhm.
was. So, how is number 6 an experiment, do you think? Or what kind of experiment would you call it now?
Yeah, it's an experiment in not providing answers. Like,
Mhm.
it's an experiment in, um, there's this phrase that I hear, and I believe that theater explains life to the living, and
Mhm.
it is this idea of like, okay, now you go and figure out what this means for you. You go do
Yeah.
that work. And it was an experiment in being like, how do I talk about a sensitive topic without being didactic, with keeping it character driven, but
Yeah.
also leaving enough in the air to where people feel like they have a starting point to have a
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah, it feels like to me, we're kind of talking about craft a little bit here, which I'm going to take full advantage of being with you as a writer. But I sort of feel like the question we're always asking ourselves is, what does an audience need to know, and when do they need to know it?
Right.
Right. And I think with a play like yours, like number 6, I think it's a pretty crucial thing, because there is a period of not knowing in your play and around different things.
Hmm.
And so for me, as a reader, there was a quality of a mystery about it. Like, I was pursuing some sort of mystery, or I was putting together pieces, if you think about it that way, which again, I found really intriguing. And of course, the play is very sure-handed. It knows where it's going. It
Right.
knows what it is. It knows what the questions that it's asking. And so those mysteries, I feel like, come together and sort of take the play to the next place.
Thank you.
In that, yeah, no. I also wanted to ask you about, again, sort of going back to the play won a prize in 2017. Ferguson had happened. 2020, a year of many things, obviously across the nation, with Black Lives Matter, and then of course January 6th. And I'm just curious, TJ, how, let me back it up. I remember after 9/11, I remember hearing an interview with a violinist, a very famous one whose name I don't remember. And she was asked, she was talking about, she had played this same piece of Bach thousands of times. And the first time she played it after 9/11, it was a different piece of music. And so I'm curious, how is your play, or is it different in 2021, do you think, than it was in 2017?
Absolutely. I think that January 6th is what really kind of shifted things, because, you know, there were two kind of reactions around all the unrest this summer, where we saw cities where police officers were violent against protesters, or we saw the opposite, where there were police officers who were walking with citizens, or, you know, resigning and saying, like, yeah, we understand. And the latter is kind of like, yeah, there's that community policing that you know, we kind of hope for, and there's that relationship, and that looking to repair something that's broken, that I think that the play leads towards near the end. And after January 6th, and seeing the, in my opinion, stark difference in the way that police were reacting to those individuals versus people of color who are protesting, that level of like reconciliation even felt a little distant from me. And so I didn't, working with the creative team, we didn't remove that idea, but we made it less, how do I say it? We made the white individual in the room work harder for it. Right. We had to make them work harder for it.
And you think that's a reflection of a change, at least that you have, it's in you, and you've recognized in your play.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, part of this is that, you know, when everything happened in Ferguson, we thought, okay, this is it. This is no more. Right. And then when we thought, when we saw it happen to George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, you know, and Ahmaud, we were like, this is it, no more. And then it's still happening. Like today, people are still dying even after all that. And so, like, how many times can we say never again, no more, and it still happen, and still be like, okay, my arms are open to accept you. You have to be like, no, you have to walk most of the distance, right?
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about in your play, I want to make sure that we note that at the center of the play is a mother.
Yes.
A business owner, African-American woman named Ella. And I wrote down one of her lines, if you don't mind. I'm just gonna, it just jumped out at me when I read your play, and it seems like it's connected to what we're saying, which she says, people tend to be braver at night.
Yeah.
And that's a, you know, that's a haunting, it's so direct, right? And yet it's also poetic and speaks from a lot of experience in that character. But I did want to mention that, you know, at the heart of the play is this African-American family. We are in their home for, you know, in the play. And I think in one scene, we're in the business, in the dry cleaning business, which is what Ella's business is. And as you said, then there is a guest, if you will, that may be oversimplifying the role of Kelly. But a lot of things are revealed then with that. Did you find in the writing of it and the rewriting of it over time, what were the most significant? I'm trying to think if this is a fair question. Like, what were, I guess you just said when I was about to ask TJ, like, what were the most, given that you're dealing with really combustible relationships and a situation that is high stakes.
Mhm.
The riots are going on outside of the home while the play is going on. And I, as a reader again of your play, I kept hearing that sound of what that must be like, knowing what's going on out there. And I didn't even know what it was for a while, which was part of the mystery too.
Right.
But what did you find? What surprised you, I guess, the most as you were writing it? Because it sounds like the play, it could have gone so many directions. You were in this moment, Ferguson happened, as you said, and I just can imagine so many things as a writer, you sitting down and this is the story, like you said, poured out of you. So what were the surprises in that for you?
Yeah, one of the biggest surprises is that I found that I had to put myself in Kelly's shoes, and I had to create a level of unwanted empathy at the time for Kelly as a character.
Yeah.
Because my deepest fear with this piece is that it's presented in such a way that it flattens characters to the point where people who might need to hear it or need to have these conversations say, I don't need to do that because this doesn't relate to me. Like, this person is so and I found myself, I was like, I constantly had to work on rounding Kelly out, Kelly out. And the more that I did that, the thing that really surprised me was it kind of helped build that philosophy that I talked about earlier around, like, oh, everyone's afraid of something. Like, a lot of this is just from fear. And like, if you can understand what someone's afraid of, you understand so much. And that was like a huge revelation, like in my spirit, right? And being like, oh, this is one of the great motivators of life. And it's trickled down into literally all my writing. I'm like, what is this person afraid of? And once I figure that out, it opens up so much more for me as a writer and looking at characters.
Yeah, and I think that question, I think we can take that into every encounter. I'm having an encounter with somebody that's difficult, and I have to ask myself, what is this person afraid of? What am I afraid of in this moment? And again, I think your play, it takes on that responsibility with a lot of grace and a lot of presence. So, personally, I can't wait to see it. And I know a couple of the actors in it, and I know your director, Dewandra. And I just want to talk a little bit. You've been working remotely, and remind us, you're in Pittsburgh, is that
Pittsburgh,
correct?
yes.
Yeah. So what has that been like as a writer working remotely on a production that's going to be streamed?
Yes.
It's fully designed. This is a full IRT production. So what's that experience? What's been the communication?
Yeah.
How have you and Dewandra talked about the play, or what's worked best for you all?
Yeah, it's been one of the weirdest things in my life, because, full disclosure, this is my first big regional show. So, you picture it in one way, you're like, I'll be there,
Right.
I'll be able to do all the things, and
Yeah.
And that just hasn't happened. But it's been emails, and I hopped on a Zoom call with the team.
Yeah.
And like, that was fantastic. uh the level of access that they've been able to have to me, like, they've had questions about things and I can email them back. It's my first time writing a program note, which sounds bizarre, but like, I'm like, I get to write a program note.
Yeah. It's great.
So it's been, IRT is really kind of taking care of me and all this. And they even offered to like have me go out there. But I am not going out there for recording because I'm getting my first COVID shot. I finally got a slot. So I was like, let me go ahead and not blow this. Let me go ahead and get this slot, because I don't know the next time it's going to come around.
Yeah.
But it's been, the communication has been great. The asks have been great. The first time I saw the little miniature model of the set, James, I freaked out a little bit, because I was like, first off, I love miniature models.
Yeah.
So it's, every step of the way has been just like a joy. And it's been really exciting.
That's so great to hear. And I just want to say again, I think, we're so honored at the IRT to be your first regional theater production. And I can say with great authority, it's a good theater to have your first regional theater production at. I think you've experienced that, even remotely, that radical hospitality that the IRT is pretty famous for. And hopefully sometime we'll all be in a room together.
I can't wait. I can't
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah.
I saw this amazing dance piece from this company in Australia last night, and to see performers touching each other again,
Yeah.
like, and I mean like 21 of them, just like I was like, oh my gosh, I miss it so much.
Yeah. Well, just seeing 21 people would make me weep,
Yeah, yeah.
honestly. It's like just that kind of scale right now sounds gigantic.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there's one more. This is a bonus question. This is, I don't think it's going to come as a surprise, but what I understand is that in some of your conversations with the creative team about some of your family and life experiences, that you wove those into the play. And I think I'm asking you this because I remember in some of my very early plays, I just used the name of my grandma, but she did not like the character who had her name, and she thought I was saying that was her. And
Really?
so this whole thing of, who are you writing about, and what does your family think about this? Do you want to talk at all about what your family is making of your life as a playwright, and also, how they see themselves in the play or not see themselves
Right.
in the play? Yeah.
Yeah, this I kind of do the same thing. I bury my family's names in random plays, with this idea that like long after they're gone, someone will be saying their name and I know what it means to me.
Yes. Yes.
But my family has been outrageously supportive this whole entire time. They're like, who's this kid who went off and decided to be an artist when, they're like, he went to school like full time. He could have, he was at one point in time, I was selling insulin pumps over the phone and making a lot of money, but they've been extremely supportive. My mom, she got to see this show when it went up in college, and this was one of the shows where she looked at me, she says, I think you can actually do this. And I was like, thanks, Mom, I'm only second year in grad school. But,
Right, I'm already in debt, but okay.
thanks.
Yeah.
But they every time they see a production, if I especially like the online ones this past year, they make sure to call me and say like, this was fantastic. And then they're like, I heard the name, and I'm like, okay, good.
Oh.
So it's really great. If my mom, she's a teacher, and she has worked with children with special needs, and one of the characters in the play, Felicia, she's on the spectrum. And my
Yes.
mom, she said, thank you for like showing them as more than just individuals who like their whole life revolves around this need.
Yeah.
And she said, these remind me of kids that I've dealt with, and it broke my heart. And I was like, all right, great, I did the things.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's so great. And what a great gift. I know exactly what you mean about hiding names in these plays for our loved ones to find, and in the future to have their names spoken aloud. It's one of those little small things, our secrets that we get to do. But TJ, it's so great getting to know you and your work a little bit, and to hear you talk about it with such passion and generosity. I really appreciate it. And I think, it doesn't surprise me, having read your play. I'll just say, like, you connect to me as the person who wrote that play. Like, there's not, I'm not going, wait a minute, this guy is like, there's a spirit there that runs through it. And that is part of your gift. And so I want to thank you for sharing that gift with us and taking that risk, because I know there's a certain amount of vulnerability that comes with having that big spirit. And
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
really, really am excited for you, for this play number 6 at the IRT, and also for all the future plays by TJ Young, which I will look forward to getting to know in the future, and thinking about remembering where was I the first time I read a play by TJ Young, and how the work going forward is always in conversation with number 6 and with the times that we live in. And so thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're gonna make me cry, James.
It's all real, man. It's real. And I'm cheering you on from California, and hopefully at some point geographically we'll be nearer to each other than we are today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Ciao.